Just one verse.
Okay. And then if you can repeat. Vijaya Pandita Ara Pandita Sri Rama Asankhya Advaita Saka Kata Laiba Nama Vijaya Pandita Ara Pandita Sri Rama. Is that all? We don't have it.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I'll just do this. Asankhya Advaita Saka Katalai Nama. Okay. So that's, I think we finished the purport already. Okay. So this is a long list of basically the line of Advaita Acharya. It is actually customary in any of the Vedic Puranas and also the Puranas that are related to these Puranas and also the purports to these Puranas to basically provide the source of truth of the bona fide lineage of each of these lines. So in that sense, this is extremely helpful. So for anyone who wants to basically talk about the Vaishnava scriptures and even scriptures in general according to the authority, the bona fide authority. Because the Prabhupada, he has given us the best form of mercy possible, best form of happiness that is possible in the material world or even in the spiritual world. And so it is prudent for Vaishnavas to protect that lineage and protect the messages that are coming across in the lineages. And so it is actually very prudent, and it is stated there are 2-3 things I wanted to talk about as well here. The first is the fact that Narada Muni here and Parvata Muni are mentioned in this purport. Like basically Srivas Pandit is the incarnation of Narada Muni, and Parvata Muni's incarnation was Sri Ram. So Narada Muni, people generally think Narada Muni, at least in India, there is this propaganda that Narada Muni is some kind of jester. Narada Muni is some, someone who plays and does this double-handed stuff, and he doesn't really talk about the gravity of the information that actually Narada Muni gives each time when he does it. But in reality, Narada Muni is one of the Sampradaya Acharyas. He is directly third in line, directly from Krishna. He is born from the mind of Brahma himself, one of the 10 Prajapatis, basically. Sorry, before the Prajapati. So essentially, it is very important for Vaishnavas to provide the proper respect that is due for Narada Muni. Narada Muni himself, before he actually became Narada Muni, it is mentioned in Bhagavatam that he was a small boy, and basically Vyasadeva asks. Vyasadeva is the disciple of Narada Muni, and so Prabhupada mentions it is prudent of a disciple to ask the spiritual master for instructions. And so Narada Muni is asked this question: what were you doing? How did you actually get to this, this position of being a Muni, and also Narada directly coming in from Brahma himself? And Narada Muni talks about his, past lifetimes. So in these past lifetimes, Narada Muni talks about the fact that he was a small boy. He wasn't. He did not get born in a very wealthy family or anything. His mother was a maid servant, and the maid servant, as a maid servant, she was trying to help as much as possible Narada Muni, and Narada Muni was living in a Brahmana kind of like basically a Gurukul style of living. While this was happening, now this mother was really anxious to protect Narada Muni because there is no other form of protection for her, and so she tries to give as much protection and nourishment as possible, but due to providence, basically, his mother also dies when he was only 5 years old. Her mother gets bitten by a snake, basically. When this was happening, now most people, when they have, when they are put into a situation where there is a lot of suffering, the first question people ask is that why am I suffering? Prabhupada mentioned that so many times in his books. People ask, instead of when asking why we are happy when we are happy, we only ask why we are suffering when we are suffering. And but Narada Muni was not like that. He was, because he was given direct instructions by his spiritual masters in the ashram, he followed in the footsteps of the spiritual master. Even when there's times of distress, he basically found ways to satisfy himself just with the instruction and following the instructions of the spiritual masters. And it's not like the spiritual masters were always with him. It was mostly just one and not even work. In the Bhagavatam, it is not mentioned whether Narada Muni again has association of the spiritual masters, but the Vani was taken into heart and he embodied the instructions as his life went on. But essentially, even though there were so many problems, he didn't have a house, he didn't have a mother, still he found a way to ward off the shackles of Maya, and still was kind of interested in spiritual satisfaction instead of material understanding of why he is suffering and why he needs to be, how he can be happy, etc. So he travels in these different places. I'm pretty sure it's well documented. Travels a lot. And then one day when he was traveling, he gets thirsty, and when he's thirsty, and hunger also, he gets hunger and thirst, and then he tries to drink like some nearby pond. He tries to take some water and drink it. Now like Prabhupada says that spiritual nourishment is a step-by-step process which takes time. Many people ask why even though we are chanting Hare Krishna, I am still having suffering. Even though I am chanting Hare Krishna, I am not feeling the pleasure, etc., etc. Prabhupada mentions it's like a mother wanting to give a baby, she needs to wait 10 months. It's not a one-step process. In fact, anything in this world is not a single, simple one-step process. Generally, the things that are actually genuinely nourishing for the soul, it takes time for that to actually bear fruit. So Narada Muni, like that, while he was doing all this sadhana, he was a Parivrajaka-acharya. Prabhupada mentions he is a Parivrajaka-acharya. Parivrajaka-acharyas are supposed to travel in all these different forests and householders and basically provide them instruction, not for the sake of begging, but for the sake of giving the instructions to householders who may be Grihamedis also, not just Grihasthas. So in this way he was trying to spend his time, but at this day for some reason he got thirsty and he stopped at a point. And while he was drinking, he felt this great nourishment and his exhaustion was going away, and he sits and starts to meditate under a banyan tree, people tree. While he was meditating, all of a sudden his eyes start watering, he's getting all the emotions of bhava. It is mentioned by Srila Prabhupada in the purport there. He's actually getting into the state where his senses were completely overthrown by the feeling, because he's seeing Lord Krishna directly, Lord Vishnu directly. And after some time, it seems like because of this extreme happiness, he could not even see both himself and Lord Vishnu. He could not even see it because his senses were completely, his senses, his whole body was completely blown away by this experience. So while this was happening, Lord Vishnu comes in, but after a few moments, he disappears because of this. And Narada Muni is like, why did he leave? Because he's getting the greatest feeling of happiness that is ever possible, pretty much for a living entity, which is to see Lord Krishna, Lord Vishnu directly. And that happiness, even normal material happiness, people are unwilling to let go of. Like people are interested in watching this TV and music, and they go do all kinds of things that gives a very small, not even a moment's pleasure in one sense. I mean, how many rasgullas can we eat? I mean, I can eat one rasgulla. If I eat the second rasgulla, it means that the first rasgulla is not very happy for me anyway. So it's 1 minute, 1 second momentary pleasure. Even for that, people are hankering. So Narada Muni, when he actually gets the real pleasure, under the influence of Bhava and Prema, when he actually sees Lord Krishna, Lord Vishnu directly, it is hard for him to take that he cannot see Lord Vishnu anymore, and he tries again and again, he couldn't see it. So at this point, actually there is a point that, which is mentioned by Raghunath Das Goswami in his book, basically, that Lord Krishna comes directly in this relation. Lord Vishnu is the partial manifestation. Lord Krishna is not. Because if Lord Krishna was a partial manifestation, then it will not be Bhagavan Swayam. Krishna is the Bhagavan Swayam is written. So he mentions that it cannot be that Krishna is a partial avatar. He is the full avatar. Whereas Lord Vishnu is the partial avatar meant for the material world, basically. And he mentions that the partial avatars are existing in Vaikuntha, whereas the full avatar has come to material world, which is very strange, but it is Radha Parisisvara. Yeah, it is quite inconceivable that Lord Vishnu, who's a partial, incarnation in a way, he is in Vaikuntha, whereas Krishna, who's the complete Purnavatar himself, he is in the material world. That's what Raghunath Goswami writes in his books, basically. So when he sees Lord Vishnu, Lord Narada becomes completely overwhelmed with ecstasy. Now he cannot see him, so he's trying to get this feeling, this happiness, this feeling of prema and bhava again. Basically ananda. That is the expression for the soul. He wants to experience that bliss again of seeing Lord Krishna, but he cannot. And Lord Vishnu comes and says, "This birth, this is the maximum you can basically see," because he also mentions that anyone who has material attachments and dirt, he cannot completely see Lord Vishnu's form consistently. So, and that is for Lord Narada. So, I cannot imagine what it is for me. But that is what is written. Now, the reason I say that is because Narada Muni is an extremely elevated soul. He is the spiritual master of Vyasadeva, who's written all these shastras, books. He's given a whole lineage. He split the 4 Vedas. That person is actually a disciple of Narada Muni. And also other elevated devotees like Dhruva Maharaj and Prahlad Maharaj, literally everyone, most of the people we see in the Puranas, some of them have some kind of touch with Narada Muni. So Narada Muni is an extremely elevated, soul, basically someone who's mentioned in the Bhagavatam that he has recollections from previous days of Brahma. And it is mentioned by Vyasadeva that it is not possible for normal Atmas to actually have those experiences and remembrances, but Narada Muni has the remembrances, because this story actually happened from the previous day of Brahma, whereas he is the Narada Muni now. Now that's a different chapter in Bhagavatam that is mentioned. So, since he is the Sampradaya Acharya, pretty much, he's directly the son of Brahma, he needs to be given that respect as well, which sometimes we see in the media it is not completely provided, but as devotees it is our duty also to provide the information about Narada Muni. Even that is provided through distribution of books. Just by distributing books, we can actually achieve the greatest form of enlightenment possible in this age of Kali. It is also mentioned here that Parvata Muni is a friend of Narada Muni. With some impersonalists, they may have this opinion that people who are enlightened souls, they should not have any friends. Like they're always alone. They're sitting somewhere in the, I don't know, Prayag or the Himalayas somewhere who's meditating. I mean, Narada Muni also meditated. It is very stated directly in the Bhagavatam. He meditated and he actually saw Lord Vishnu directly, but that doesn't mean that he cannot speak with other devotees. In fact, speaking and making friends with devotees is very beneficial according to the Sampradaya Acharyas for the improvement of our bhakti. Apart from taking service, performing service to devotees, just making friends of devotees is also a kind of service. So Parvata Muni is a friend of Narada Muni. We don't really have a lot of mention of Parvata Muni in Bhagavatam. I tried to search for it. The only explanations that were given was Parvata Muni is always with Narada Muni pretty much. He's one of the rishis. He's a Deva Rishi. And as a Deva Rishi, he was invited to Janamejaya ritual. King Janamejaya is on the line of Parikshit Maharaj, and he was the one who was instituting the sacrifices of snakes, which is basically a result of Parikshit Maharaj getting bitten. So, because Parikshit Maharaj was such a great devotee, literally an entire gamut of snakes were basically extinct. Now, not to make it slight, it was a very important happening because that is one of the first incidents that are narrated both in Bhagavatam and in Mahabharata. So it's definitely an important incident, and basically King Janamejaya, he does this yagya to kill all the snakes. All kinds of different species that we don't see. All the species we see now, probably not the full version or extinct. So Parvata Muni was in that. That is what is mentioned. That's the only thing I could find personally. But yeah, so I just wanted to touch upon this point. Like, it is very beneficial to have friends, especially devotee friends who are with us, who are like-minded, who are able to help us in our time of distress, because it is difficult to expect, Ananda in every single step, especially in the material world. Maya is everywhere. Every moment is dangerous. Even when Krishna protects devotees, we see that the devotees do not sometimes follow the full regulations, and they sometimes even leave. Not to say that that is always the case, but it's certainly prudent to have association of Vaishnavas, and that is one of the best ways to keep ourselves fixed in both our service and in remembrance of Krishna. Basically, this is a very, in my opinion, a very interesting topic. It may seem like it's just a few names, but these are very important names also, because all these names are the collection of authorities who are directly related to the Advaita Acharya. Here it is mentioned, another few points are mentioned in verse 58. One of the verses, verse 58. So there are 3 points of note in this verse that I wanted to talk about. The first one is the fact that Bhagavad Acharya, who's in the line of Advaita Acharya, he was actually Sveta Manjari, and Ananta Acharya was Sudevi. Now they may come slightly later, but you see sometimes Manjari come, and then you have this. So it's all very inconceivable. We should not try to interpolate our mental thought processes and speculations into all of these. So these are given in a bona fide fashion. There is no absolutely zero way for us to understand this without the acharyas telling it like it is. So these are extremely important. These are also important to actually protect the traditions of the Vaishnavas, because frankly, there is another point here. Actually, I'll go to that first. There is another point that is mentioned here about something. Ketari Mahotsav. I'm not sure if I had basically done some research on this. So Ketari Mahotsava, it seems it's Kethuri Mahotsava actually. So Keturi Mahotsava was the festival, seemingly, when the Panchatattva was established as the Panchatattva. So until then, it seems like no one really worshipped with proper standards. Or in fact, there was no deification of Advaita Acharya or others. Like only maybe it is mentioned, at least this is from what we see in history. Not all histories are correct. All the science is bogus in most cases, but some of it, is kind of helpful. Like in this case, basically it is mentioned that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was worshipped, but not with the, it seems, not completely with a certain kind of standard followed everywhere. And with especially the Panchatattva deities, it seems were established in the Keturi Mahotsav. And so that is what is mentioned here. So when he says, when Vishnu Acharya was present during the Keturi Mahotsava, Achyutananda was also present. It seems Janava Mataji, Janava Dasi, she is one of the primary great gurus from the Chaitanya line, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's line. She, and Nityananda Prabhu's line, obviously, she installed the deities of Panchatattva, and she made this standardization, because it seems until then, even then, during the time of Advaita Acharya, it seems there were difficulties. Like Advaita Acharya's few followers did not follow correctly, etc., etc. So there was a need for standardization and to follow with a disciplic succession correctly. And this was Keturi Mahotsava was the essential, pretty much the first time, definitely the first time where Panchatattva was established. So we may ask why this is all important. Why is it necessary to have, why is it necessary to read the Bhagavatam? Why is it necessary to read about Narada Muni? Why is it necessary to read about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? All of this. And why is it necessary to have all these names in a book specifically? So all these, especially in the Vedic line, everything has a strict process of disciplic succession and also a very clear delineation of what should be contained where. Like Puranas have, all the Puranas should have 10 things, like the creation, secondary creation, destruction, etc. So these are, and information about the incarnation. So these are very simple but very critical aspects that you will find in literally every single Purana. And in most of the Puranas, it is mentioned Narayana as God. So how do we know that this certain thing is right? How do we know that Hare Krishna is the mantra that was chanted by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? All of these are actually from the line disciplic succession, because it seems like even that was changed. I mean, if I was basically thinking out, I would think that something that works for me, I won't change it. I mean, why would I change if the process is so clear? I mean, basically 16 rounds, 4 relative principles. It's a very easy process to follow. It's a very simple set of instructions, and we can go as deep as we want or as shallow as we want, and it's still possible to get Krishna Prema just by chanting Hare Krishna. But even the namas are changed. Even the base mantras are changed. So it is definitely prudent for us as followers of Srila Prabhupada and ISKCON to understand at least where we understand definitely the tattva, basically tattva purya, like the way you understand it is through the philosophical method and not just by speculating something randomly. And so that is where there are so many rules, but the main rules are described very clearly. And so it is extremely prudent for us to clearly understand the fact that we are directly following the instructions of Krishna. There is no question about that. It is definitely the instructions from Krishna himself. Maybe there are slight changes according to the time and place, but the core instructions remain the same. I mean, there can be so many other things which can be spoken, but I don't know when we stop. So,
9 including questions.
Okay, so I'll go for another 10 minutes. So, essentially, there are a lot of things in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's lifetime that defy all arts. For instance, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu only specifically wrote one book, and that is sung in literally every single ISKCON center. So, and he tried a lot to preach by action, by instead of just saying this is what we do, he basically he danced in front of the Lord, he danced in front of the devotees, he basically provided, he was basically directly the personification of Radharani's prema. So he basically explained through actions instead of explaining through words, and that in a way is kind of very difficult, because Lord Krishna gave so many instructions. Lord Krishna, Lord Vishnu, they all give instructions. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he shows this is what we do. And similarly, if we just follow the very simple instructions, and the only instruction literally he gives is to chant Hare Krishna. Everything else is just like, there are so many things which are added upon by Acharyas. Like here it is mentioned Ganadesha Deepika, and few other books basically, which extremely elevated information in these books that we should never speculate on, that I personally find myself unqualified for. But the fact is that these books ultimately serve the purpose of chanting Hare Krishna. So if we are not even chanting Hare Krishna properly, then that's probably the first issue that is to be sorted, instead of going to all these scientific methods. But for sure, Lord Krishna is very merciful. No matter what we do, he gives us complete support, complete mercy in all possibilities, whether we are material misery, even spiritually something's wrong, every single problem that we encounter, Lord Krishna basically helps us solve. But we should, it is mentioned clearly that as devotees, we should not, in the future verses, we should not deviate from the main instructions, simple instructions, but also very crucially critical instructions that are provided by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it is described as the trunk, and everyone is basically the branch. So the moment we are away from the trunk, we are very small. We are very small, and we are always surrounded by Maya. We are in France. I just came from Seattle. There's so many things. If we really want to be in Krishna consciousness without the help of Krishna and devotees, it is literally impossible. And without the help of books like Chaitanya Charitamrita and Srimad Bhagavatam, if we don't read these books, then we are doing a great disservice to the amount of effort that the other devotees are doing and what Srila Prabhupada himself did. So it is definitely crucial. Very simple instructions that are given by our acharyas are followed without changing unnecessarily, without a reason to change them. The different kinds of rules are spoken about in Puranas. There are different kinds of rules. There are, for example, rules that are specified in the Dharma Puranas are lower compared to the lower rules that are provided in the Bhakti Puranas and stuff like that. So very difficult to actually, if I want to go myself and read all of these things, it would be literally impossible for us to know. Just by associating 1 hour with devotees, a person can be completely fulfilled in life. That is the greatest benediction that a person can have. And so let us just chant Hare Krishna and be happy. That's what I think. And I end with this. So if there are any questions, there are a lot more research that I did actually for this book. If you have any questions, you can ask me.
Yeah. Hare Krishna. First of all, apologize for the beginning where we had technical issues and we disturbed everything. After that, you mentioned in the class about Ketuli Festival and inauguration of the proper standard worship of Panchatattva. So it is one of the aspects I am discovering thanks to you about the Ketuli Festival. There are many other reasons why it happened, and where can we find this Raman about the Panchatattva installation? Where did you get this information?
It is actually, I'll send that to you in text, but
it's in the text.
It is in the purport. Okay. I read the, so it said, It is in Bhakti Ratnakar. So Bhakti Ratnakar was written by Narottam Das Thakur, I think so. So that, yeah. So what is mentioned in the purport is that Vishnu Das Acharya was present in Keturi Mahotsav. He went there with Achyutananda as stated in Bhakti Ratnakar. So Prabhupada is giving all references. And so it is, so it is actually very interesting to me when I first read that. It was that it's not that we just follow. I mean, it is possible that many people think that these are just rules. We can just, some things can be changed here and there. And sometimes even devotees, even I might think that, hey, why should I follow these rules? But it is very clear that even they've taken such a pain, such great devotees directly from Vrindavan, Golok Vrindavan. Krishna himself comes, his whole entourage comes to set up a process and to set up a simple way for worshipping Radharani and Lord Krishna for Kali Yuga. And it is mentioned in very high depth the amount of pains that the devotees, Janava Mataji, it seems like Janava Mataji was the main, how to call it, inaugurator of the festival. So, so it is not something, these processes that we follow, especially for deity worship, they are through bona fide authorities, and a lot of devotees have basically standardized it, and they have given us the fruit of it. So all we are doing is use the fruit. So at least that if we do not deviate, that is the greatest service that we can do for Krishna. That's at least just my opinion.
Thank you for the reference.
One thing is that you was mentioning we can go shallow or we can go deep. And still we can pray. So you can elaborate on that, how we can go by shallow to pray?
Like Haridas Thakur, I mean, Haridas Thakur was definitely an extremely elevated Vaishnava. There are a lot of devotees who have experienced it. Generally, that is actually thank you very much for the question, Prabhuji. When I said shallow, I basically meant the fact that a person just by chanting Hare Krishna can get all the fulfillment of spiritual life and get prema. We need to definitely know some level. I mean, there should be water. Whether it is shallow or deep depends on the person's intellect. Some people have very high intellectual capacity for them to understand all these extremely detailed and pleasurable readings. Some people, definitely I find pleasure in that. But other people may not have the capacity to do so. So for them, Prabhupada says, we don't even have to we don't have to be Panditas. We have to rise beyond Brahmanas, the status of Brahmanas, and become Vaishnavas. And the Prabhupada says the only criteria for being a Vaishnava is desire for prema. I think yes, two, in fact. He says, maybe if someone can remind me, but I remember two things were desire for Krishna prema and full faith in Vaishnavas and Krishna. I think those were the 2 points that I mentioned. So just by having complete faith in the teachings, and just by attending satsangs, just by hearing about Lord Krishna, just by reading about it in Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita and Bhagavad Gita, definitely it is possible for even fallen souls to rise above the modes of material nature, at least. But having said that, it is also mentioned that Prabhupada says that everyone should understand, I forgot the word for it, but based on the tattva. Maybe you can elaborate more on that from your experience. But Prabhupada says, he says that we have to apply the principles that are mentioned, not just read them once, to understand the instructions of the spiritual master and the Shastras in a very technical, philosophical fashion, such that we can nitpick every single aspect of it and really understand it. He does want that. But at the same time, he also mentions if it is not possible, that I should provide more references. I'm sorry, but he does mention in a couple, definitely in the science of self-realization, etc., that all a person needs in Kali Yuga for liberation, at least, and for Krishna Prema at most, is hearing about Krishna, chanting Krishna's name, and following the footsteps of Vaishnavas. Just by doing that, just by associating and having full faith in Lord Krishna and chanting happily, things we can go back to Godhead. If you can give more information on that, what do you think?
Nice.
Okay. Right. Okay. Chaitanya Charitamrita ki
Jai.
jai.